I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. Today, I want to talk about estate planning. This is a topic that I think some people get caught up in and think because of tax changes, whatever, that it's not as important. But talk about estate planning for today and beyond. As we start looking at our estate planning, we've got to remember this is always goal-based planning. Everybody's plan is going to be different because their goals and objectives are different. Their family's different. Their need for retirement or legacy or long-term care or just their lifestyle. All of those things that come together, and those we've got to understand those goals to help them with their planning. So the question I have is, why is estate planning, and why does it still matter? If you think about this, estate planning isn't about the documents, it's about having the right direction. And that direction's for us today and going forward as we pass things on to our heirs. A good estate plan defines how your family, business, and legacy continue without interruption or disruption. So if we don't plan, just think about the things that are going to happen and that you're going to lose control of. Those that don't plan don't maintain control. Those that do will have the control. But remember, if you don't set up the right controls, the courts step in to do the job for you. Now, if you don't care, don't plan. But if you want to make sure your plan is operating for you and for your family, make sure you plan and make sure you control how that plan is going to operate. And I like this. Today's small steps protect tomorrow's confidence. Take the steps today to get your plan in place. And then you're going to review and revise that plan as you go forward and have the confidence that what you want to have happen will happen. There again, don't plan, roll the dice and hope it turns out great for your heirs. That's not planning, that's just accident reconstruction. We want to make sure that we're planning today to make sure we have the right result for you and your family going forward. If you look at the four pillars of a lasting plan, number one, think about your legacy. What story will your wealth tell? What do you want to be remembered for? And it's not just about the money, but it's about what good you can do for your family, for your charities, for your business. That legacy, there again, what's that story going to be after you've passed on? If you look at our pillars that deal with the family, who's going to lead, protect, and inherit your wealth? Who's going to make sure that what you want happens? Who's going to protect that wealth for your heirs? Do you have the right documents and right plan in place to make sure all of that is going to happen? And if you look at lifestyle, and I like this as a pillar because when we start talking estate planning, everybody thinks, okay, what happens after I'm gone? Well, we want to make sure we're protecting your lifestyle today. We want you to have the freedom and flexibility to do what you want. So, as we're working with our clients and going back through their goals, let's don't always jump just to the future. Let's look at what happens today getting to the future. So if we have a client that wants to, retire in 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, is there a estate planning set up to allow that? Are we creating a holistic plan that takes care of them today? And as we move that into the future, think about that freedom and flexibility for our kids or our grandkids. Are we creating something that protects them from their creditors, protects them from themselves? What is it that freedom and flexibility means for our clients? And we have to encapsulate that into the plan. Finally, the last pillar is long-term care. Who is going to take care of you if that long-term care need arises? And think about that. We don't think about this enough. But when we're looking at our planning and thinking about the future, nobody projects and looks forward and says, "Oh, I see myself in 20 years in a bed not being able to do anything." But we know statistically, the vast majority of us are going to need some kind of long-term care help. And are we planning for that? Not just planning for it financially, which is a burden. And if you think about financially, are we protecting not only the person that's going to need the long-term care, but also our spouse and family that are going to be there that need the money outside of care? What I see a lot happen a lot of times in a long-term care situation, people are pulling from their retirement accounts, paying the tax, putting that towards the care for the spouse that needs that care. There again, that's the right thing to do because they need the care. Let's spend the money and make sure it happens. But if we've drained all of those retirement assets, what about our well spouse that might live another 10, 15, 20 years? How are they going to live if we've sucked away all of their retirement assets? So when we look at long-term care, it's how do we plan financially to make sure that we have the money, available and identified to cover those long-term care financial needs. The other part of that is let's plan and think ahead. Where do you want your care to happen? Who do you want providing care? Are you okay with an outside professional coming into your home and providing care? Or do you think a family member is going to do that? Well, if a family member is going to provide that care, are we ready to compensate them for their time away from work and make sure that they don't get drugged down, during that process? And we see that happen a lot with the caregivers is their health declines, their financial situation declines. So having this as a pillar of our plan is key because it's going to affect the vast majority of us as we go forward. When I think about a properly designed estate plan, and especially as we're looking at these foundational plans, start thinking looking at this. We want to avoid probate and administrative delays. If we're building this plan, let's don't build a plan and end up in a probate situation because that's just going to delay making sure our plan is effective. And it's a frustrating process to go through in many states. There again, if we properly plan, we can avoid that. And we don't have a delay. If something happens to you today, the next person's ready to take over and make sure your plan works. All the time when we're planning, we want to look at the tax effect. And we know with the 2026, the estate tax exemption federally is going to go up to 15 million and indexed for inflation. So for many, they think, oh, estate tax doesn't apply to me. But remember, there's some states out there that have their own estate tax that kicks in at a much, much lower level. But also, are we addressing the income tax effect in our estate plan, both for now and going forward? Remember, at death, we get a step up in basis that wipes away a lot of our capital gains problems. But if we have a lot of money going into retirement accounts, well, I see a lot of clients that don't want to take more of their retirement income coming from qualified accounts because they don't want to pay the tax bill. Well, now they pass away and they pass that tax bill to their kids that have to recognize that over at most a 10-year period, which might be a burden on them in that income tax situation. So we want to minimize it for you and for your kids. We want to preserve family harmony and privacy. What do you want to have happen? And you know your family better. What do we have to do to make sure that we keep the family harmony, keep the kids talking, enjoying one another, and all of it that you want to keep private is kept private? Finally, when we're looking at the estate plan, it's not just about wealth. What is that legacy? What is that wisdom that you want to pass on to your kids, to your grandkids? We want to make sure that's part of this plan so that they remember you and for the opportunities that you've provided them, for the advice you can give them. Let's don't lose sight of that in the estate plan and just focus on transferring assets. It's about transferring the legacy and the wealth and the wisdom from mom and dad. Finally, if you think about this as we look at our plan, I like thinking of this as an umbrella, and a properly designed plan keeps the rain off everything that matters. That's the goal of estate planning. We want to make sure that we have this umbrella over everything that matters to you, to make sure that your plan works, that everything goes in a manner that allows us to achieve your goals and objectives. I appreciate everybody getting on. If you have questions, reach out. If not, we'll talk again next week. Thank you.